Camcorder Cameron here. Today I'm going to be watching Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and discussing the book with you all. I want to talk about the differences and the similarities. I just got through rereading the Shining novel, so it's fresh in my mind and I'm ready to rewatch the movie with y'all. I've done another video in this format before with the movie Blade Runner, so if you're interested in that, feel free to check it out. But I'm ready to just get right into it. So this song right here is called Dies Irae. It's from the 13th century and it's actually a medieval chant. So that's why it's so spooky sounding.
What about Tony? He's looking forward to the hotel, I bet.
I think it's adorable that Wendy is embracing Tony.
Well, I'm looking for a change.
So one major gripe Stephen King had with this adaptation of his beloved novel The Shining is Jack Nicholson's casting. He thought that Jack was quote-unquote crazy from the jump, which was not his intentions whenever he was writing Jack Torrance. King was really hesitant about Jack Nicholson because as far as he knew, Jack always plays a crazy man. And he was really looking for somebody ordinary to be Jack Torrance. Which I bring this up at this time because I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. I can see what he's saying. This is our first scene with Jack Nicholson and already he is a little bit off. He's a ham. He can't help himself. Even whenever he's trying to be more subtle and normal, like he just can't act normal to save his life. I'm sorry, Jack. I think this movie's really great because of the way he portrays the character, but I do agree that it's not like totally faithful to his intentions in the book.
Just happens to be exactly what I'm looking for. I'm outlining a new writing project and
The eyebrows don't help, do they? He really can't help himself with those eyebrows.
I'm sure she'll be absolutely fascinated when I tell her about it. She's a confirmed ghost story and horror film addict.
Same girl. I think we'd be friends. Okay, so that scene was essentially beat for beat, very faithful to the novel. However, there is a very important scene that they did not include yet. I think they're withholding on the whole Jack Torrance alcoholic arc, but the interviewer, Mr. Ullman, he, whenever talking about the Grady killing murder tragedy, he mentions that, oh, Grady was an alcoholic and I didn't know that before I hired him. And so since then, we've had to remove all the alcohol from the hotel whenever we shut down. And I want to bring it up to you. Jack Torrance is an alcoholic. So he feels very offended in that moment. And he festers that rage deep down. And it comes out at a later scene.
Tony, do you think Dad'll get the job? He already did. He's gonna phone Wendy up in a few minutes to tell her.
I do really like the directorial choice to have Tony be a little finger puppet. That's not necessarily included in the book. Other adaptations have shown Tony as like a spectral imaginary image. But I like this choice because it's a lot creepier to see the change of tone in this child whenever he's playing two different characters.
Tony, why don't you want to go to the hotel?
And it does make it more, like, understandable and childlike to be like, oh, kids have imaginary friends. Like, this is his little finger friend. More explainable than the supernatural visions that Danny has in the book. This is one of the most iconic scenes in the whole movie. If you see this, you know what movie it is. It's lived on. It's so beautiful. This doesn't exactly happen in the book. The twins aren't in the book. This elevator blood isn't in the book, but it might as well be because you do get similar grotesque images, and I think it captures the feeling of the horror really well.
Is Tony one of your animals?
No, he's a little bit that lives in my mouth.
So cute.
My husband grabbed his arm, to pull him away from him. It's just the sort of thing you do 100 times with a child, On this particular occasion, my husband just used too much strength and he injured Danny's arm.
I love this scene because you can see and hear almost like the script that he's fed her and the manipulation and the rationalization she's done in her own head to make sense of how he could do this to his own son. But he does own up to it more. It isn't just a pure accidental thing. It's kind of like this deep, dark thing of the past that they don't like to talk about, and they thought about divorcing at the time. Now, it may be hard to believe, but all of the interior of the Overlook Hotel that we see is completely built on set. The visual design of the Overlook is inspired by the real Uwani Lodge in Yosemite Park, so it's got some influence there, but I mean, this looks so well made and real. I always thought this was filmed inside a real hotel. Creepy! This part is so scary. The twins, they're a nice addition. Very spooky. I think this movie put twins on the map in the horror genre. I do think it set that precedent. Let me know if I'm wrong.
This is our famous hedge maze. It's quite an attraction around here.
This is the first time we're seeing the iconic hedge maze. In the book, it's topiary hedge animals, like big bushes they carved to be lions and bunnies and different kind of animals. And that is one change that Stephen King said that he didn't mind. He understood that it's hard to translate on film because it would look silly or fake. And especially, like, this is the 70s, y'all. We don't have the amazing CGI that we have today. So yeah, that's a choice, and it's a choice that worked well for this movie because they didn't do away completely with the whole hedge because they have the maze, which is its own thing, and it makes the movie unique. And arguably, I like the maze better than the animals because, you know, every time I'm in a corn maze, I feel like I'm in the Shining movie, you know, I feel a little bit freaky, but the hedge animals, they were almost too, like, dragon-like.
When was the Overlook built?
Construction started in 1907. It's finished in 1909.
The exterior shots of the Overlook Hotel are the Timberland Lodge in Oregon.
Come on over and say hello to Mr. and Mrs. Torrance. Sure. This is Dick Halloran.
Yay! I love Mr. Halloran.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc?
They gotta make it so creepy. The book is definitely a lot more loving. Dick Halloran quickly becomes like a wise grandfather figure to Danny. But it works for this movie. It is a horror movie.
Do you know how I knew your name was Doc?
Slight divergence here whenever Mr. Halloran in the novel pulls Danny aside to talk to him and have a little one-on-one. They do it outside the Overlook. They're in the parking lot. He's like, hey, let me show you my cool vehicle. He's got some kind of like flashy car he's really proud of, and you know, boys like cars, so he's showing off the car and they sit inside and talk. I like this a lot better. I think it's more natural to offer a kid ice cream whenever his parents are going on this long, boring tour. I know it was like back in the day and people weren't so clingy about their kids and stranger danger, but I did always think it was weird when reading the book and they just like let their kid go off with this man they just met and like sit in his car alone with him. I thought that was kind of freaky, so I think this makes more sense, even though they're both still alone with Danny. But Mr. Halloran, he's a really good guy. Nothing nefarious goes on here.
Tony's a little boy that loves my mouth.
I think a lot of things happen right here in this particular hotel over the years.
What about room 237?
Ooh, you know about that?
You're scared of room 237, ain't you?
Can't lie to each other, can they? One little detail that I really love about Mr. Halloran's shine is that before he gets a premonition, he smells oranges. And he's from Florida. So I think a lot of times whenever he's not in Boulder, he's in Florida, he smells oranges and he doesn't always know it's about to hit him. Ooh, I love him riding his little tricycle. This isn't in the book at all. You know, Danny does different things playing around the hotel, but we never hear about him riding his tricycle. And this is so cool and spooky, and it works really well in this movie to just show from a child's perspective how ginormous this place is. And I imagine, this is the best place to ride your tricycle, man. There's so much room for it. Oh, Miss Wife. This is fun. I love this. It does seem at first like a honeymoon in a lot of ways, or a family vacation where they're staying somewhere fancy before the cabin fever sets in. So cute. I mean, get a woman like that, you hold on to her.
When we first came up here, I thought it was kind of scary.
Oh, I love Shelley Duvall. I think she's adorable. She's got that Bambi face. You know those memes where like, when you're mean to me, this is who you're being mean to? She's kind of the embodiment of that meme. She's such a sweet creature. And I could see her doing no wrong. She just has that innocent look. Spooky. That is honestly a really fun thing they did with the camera there, because at first you hear this and it sounds like an ominous soundtrack beat. Then they zoom out and you see him partially throwing the ball, and you think, oh, he's just in there playing with Danny, throwing the ball. And then it zooms out more and he's just playing by himself, throwing a ball against a wall. But yeah, that is kind of unsettling. I mean, who wouldn't do that? Like, I'm not saying that it's inherently creepy to do that, but it's creepy when he does that. And here's our fun hedge maze. I've never been in a hedge maze before, but I've always wanted to because of this movie. You should be throwing that ball with your son. Literally 1 month and he's already losing it. Such a baby. That's really, really cool. I love that part. So beautiful. I love this hotel because it looks so natural with the mountain there. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. The sound design with him riding his tricycle is really magnificent. Gives you some ASMR effects. It's very pleasing to the mind. Don't do it. Curiosity killed the cat, boy. And he knows better. He was warned against it. He knows he's not supposed to. The twins. Ooh, okay, I bet the twins are the children that Grady murdered. That is really nice. I don't think in the book it's ever explicitly said that they're twins, but I love that they changed it to be twins. That's cool. I just got that. Another time where they're playing this for effects, but in the book, whenever Wendy hears his tapping of the keyboard, that eases her. She's like, ooh, that man is doing his work. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's in a good mood when he's getting his work done. She loves to hear him typing on the keyboard.
Don't be so grouchy.
I'm not being grouchy.
I don't know. Sometimes when someone's in a mood, you just gotta leave it be and come back later.
I'll come back later on with a couple of sandwiches for you.
Exactly, girl.
When I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in.
That's another difference that I really appreciate is they chose to have his workroom be in the lounge of this lobby, so the typing echoes throughout the hotel, and that's really ominous. And we get so many more scenes in the book of... This part always cracks me up. That feeling when you're catatonic. As I was saying, the book gives us a lot more scenes of Jack playing with Danny. Danny, he's a daddy's boy. Even though Wendy gives him anything and everything he ever needs, he just loves his dad. We get scenes where he's out playing in the snow with Danny, throwing snowballs with him. He's helping him read his books before he goes to bed. He's kissing him goodnight. I want to see some more affection. I agree with King's opinion on that, where he's just crazy from the jump. I love the way that they filmed that too, because it gives you illusions to being inside the hedge maze, rolling through the overlook hallways. It's very maze-like. I love this.
Play with us, Daddy.
Oof.
And ever.
So freaking creepy. Now, a very important piece of advice Dick Halloran gives him in the novel is, hey, every time you see something in the overlook, you just look away. It's just a scary picture in a book. And so that's what Danny would be doing in this scene. He would see these horrible images. He would remember what Dick told him. He would think, it's not real. Open his eyes and it's gone.
Mr. Halloran said,
Oh, here it is.
it's just like pictures in a book, Danny.
Yes, I love
It
that.
isn't real.
Can I go to my room and get my fire engine?
Come here for a minute first.
Yeah, Danny doesn't seem like he likes his dad very much. You don't ever get scenes like this in the book. Even whenever Danny can tell that his dad is having thoughts about bad things, and even after his dad does something to hurt him, it's never that weird. Like, they just go back to acting like nothing ever happened between each other because he loves his dad no matter what. Obviously, I'm not saying Danny doesn't love his dad, but he does seem like he's got his walls up around him. Now, that would be a really fun rug to play cars on. It's already got like built-in roads. Now here she is doing her husband's job. He's supposed to be tampering the boiler pressure. She shouldn't have to do that.
Well, I dreamed that I killed you and Danny.
I think you should just keep that to yourself, man.
I cut you up into little pieces.
Too much detail.
Your dad's just gotta hit it.
I know what's about to happen. It's gonna have the marks on him. And she, in the book, she's immediately horrified whenever she sees him sucking his thumb, because that was something he did when he was much younger, but he grew out of it. So she sees it as a regression, and it's a very alarming sign. And that's even before she sees the mark on his neck. And of course, her first thought is Jack, because they're locked in this hotel together, and he has a history of causing injury to his son. It is the most plausible rationale to be like blaming it on him, but she has every right.
How could you? How could you?
I love her reaction here. And Danny's so frozen in fear, he can't, verbalize what happened to him. And I like that the movie is leaving it up to interpretation. For right now, we don't know if Danny did get hurt by his dad or what. But in the book, we know it was the lady in the bathtub, which we'll see later on. But we see the whole scene of Danny walking into the room and walking up to the bathtub and seeing her come for him. We see that whole thing play out. But this is a good choice because we don't know what's going on as a viewer right now, what the truth is. Man needs a drink. In the book, he gets migraines, so he starts popping Excedrin, except he doesn't swallow them, he chews them, which is an old habit he used to have back in his drinking days when he would have really bad hangovers. So Wendy, she doesn't like to see him chewing that Excedrin.
Here's to 5 miserable months on the wagon and all the irreparable harm that it's caused me.
That's in the book as well, where we see him drinking, but you know that there's nothing in the hotel except for cooking sherry, which he never even breaks into the cooking sherry. So he's just drinking like ghost liquor alone in the bar, and he starts to exhibit, the behavioral signs of being inebriated. And he used to have this old tic back in his drinking days where he would like rub his mouth. And so Wendy, around the Overlook Hotel, she sees him rub his mouth, which she hasn't done since his drinking days, and she is like freaked out. She thinks it's probably the Excedrin he's popping, but she is just like, what in the world? It kind of gives her the creeps because she's like, could he have found alcohol? And this is another element that I really love because it just speaks to the subtleties in a relationship of someone who's an alcoholic or a recovering alcoholic. She has this old habit from the days back when he used to drink where she would go in for a hug and get a little whiff in while she's hugging him, and she would think that she's doing it so secretly to smell if she can smell the alcohol in his breath. But it's a big annoyance to Jack because he could know exactly what she's doing. So she does that in the Overlook. When she sees him rub his mouth, she goes in for her little hug and sniff, and he is just really resenting her for that in his mind.
I did hurt him once, okay? Completely unintentional. Could have happened to anybody. A momentary loss of muscular coordination.
And there's the script that he keeps telling himself and he keeps telling Wendy. And we heard it earlier when she said to the doctor, it could have happened to anyone, it's just one of those things. He grabbed him too hard. I don't know. I mean, kids are frail, but you gotta really grab someone hard to dislocate their shoulder or break their arm.
There's someone else in the hotel with us. There's a crazy woman in one of the rooms. She tried to
Now
strangle
they're
me.
missing a really great scene that I wish they kept. After she sees the mark around Danny's neck, she asks, what did you do to him? She accuses Jack, rightfully so. And then a little bit later on, Danny's able to speak, and she's like, what happened to you? Can you please tell me who did this to you? And in front of the two of them, he said, she did it. And so then Jack gets to be the one to be like, oh, Wendy, you did this to him. And we see his internal dialogue of, he knew that Wendy wouldn't hurt a fly. He knew that she couldn't have possibly done that. She'd rather do that to herself before she would let that happen to Danny. But he still reveled in that momentary bliss of being able to turn the table around and have her feel what it feels like to be accused. But then, of course, she comes to the conclusion, obviously, I didn't do it. A crazy woman must be in the hotel with us, you know? They're not thinking it's supernatural yet. So spooky. I like this because it's subtly creepy, but I also really like the way that it happens in the book, where he's driving in Florida and his hot rod, he's smelling the fresh oranges of the air, and then wham, he gets hit with this mental thing like he's never been hit before, of Danny pleading, help, you gotta come, help me. And he's driving while it happens, so he veers his car and almost wrecks it into another car, which is much more dramatic to be, you know, on the road whenever you get this mental signal. Such a gorgeous bathroom. Even if it had creepy vibes, I would want to hang out in there. It's so pretty. I'd take a selfie. This is another change, which I appreciate this change, because it does seem like the hotel is trying to lure Jack in and give him his drinks and give him, you know, a beautiful naked woman to entice him. But really, this scene in the book, you see her for what she is, which is like a zombie looking woman. But also, like, shame on you, sir. Just because she's hot and she's naked and beautiful, like, you don't care that this is the crazy woman that your wife said strangled your son? Also in the book, Wendy pleads for him to go up into the room and check and see if the crazy lady's in there. So he's like, fine, I'll go up in there. He goes in the room, he doesn't see anything, he's like, ugh. But he does notice, like, the bath mat is on the floor. When he's like, that's weird. They cleaned up all the laundry before they closed. Maybe a housekeeper was just rushing to get out on the last day. But then as he's leaving, he sees, like, wetness on the ground and stuff. And so it's confirmed in his mind, like, what he experienced, what his son experienced was real. But still, he goes downstairs and he lies to Wendy and says that he never saw anything, even though he did. God, that's so freaky. Yeah, that really does make you think of the old mermaid tales, of them appearing to be beautiful things to lure you in, and then right when you're in their clutches, they show you who they really are. Monsters.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
He's got a great pad.
You find anything?
No, nothing at all.
There you go. Why? I never understand why he lies. Because he's covering for the hotel at this point? He feels like he's in cahoots? I don't know.
Whatever the explanation is.
Poor baby. I always feel so bad for Danny. Because he's only 5.
Good evening, Mr. Torrance.
Good evening.
So beautiful. Such a beautiful ballroom. And it just looks right to see it so full of people. It was almost like scarier earlier without all the ghosts in it, whenever they were just in the empty ballroom.
Hold this for you there.
Gorgeous, gorgeous bathroom. It's another bathroom I would love to take a selfie in.
What do they call you around here, Jeevesy?
Grady, sir. Delbert Grady.
Ooh, the killer.
You were the caretaker here, but you are the caretaker.
There we go. The undeniable truth. He is the caretaker.
I've always been here.
Yeah, you're not talking to Mr. Grady. You're talking to the head honcho demon of the Overlook right here.
He is a very willful boy.
Now, in the novel, Jack does not like that they're talking about Danny. While he's being swept up in this dream and he's going along with it, he's having a good time. The moment they bring Danny into it, he's like, whoa, Danny doesn't have anything to do with this. This is about me. It's me you want. But they're very insistent on bringing Danny in. Jack doesn't like that. He's very protective of his son.
Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Yeah, that was freaky.
Everything's okay.
KDK-1, KDK-12. Are you receiving?
I wish they didn't change that scene because in the book it's so good. He's sleepwalking and he's having a trauma dream where he's recalling a time his father almost beat his mother to death with a cane. And in his sleep, he smashes the radio because he's hearing his father's voice from the radio telling him to kill Danny and telling him to kill his wife. And he's like, no! And he smashes the radio and he wakes up out of the dream and the radio's all smashed up. You know, it's not something he does intentionally like that. And I like it because we get to see, you know, more background into his past and why he is this way. Mr. Halloran, like, it doesn't get much realer than that. Like, that is the kind of friend you want to have. He is flying to try and rescue Danny. I don't think that just anybody would do that, but we do see some more insight into his mind in the book where he's like, I can't live with a guilty conscience if anything happens to Danny. He would blame himself. Ooh, this is really freaky. This never happens in the book, and I love it. It's one of the more memorable parts of this movie for me. Honey, you've been working yourself so hard.
Stay away from me. Please. Don't hurt me.
She doesn't want to turn her back to him, but she needs to just book it and lock herself in a room. Haha. So that scene is played out really great. I love that.
Hey. Are you ready, man?
Such a smart idea. It makes perfect sense. She's like, he can have the pantry, he can feed himself, we can lock it from the outside, he won't freeze, it's warm in there, and we can eat all the stuff that's in the freezer. It makes perfect sense. But she didn't account for the ghosts, did she?
I'm gonna go now.
Wendy!
And you can see how this decision is just tearing her up. Even after everything she just went through with him, she's like second guessing herself because he's getting in her mind.
Oh, check it out!
So spooky. And I love that camera angle. Seeing him from the floor. Yeah. Ooh, I love that reveal. And it's a clever play on words because the doctor hears red rum and he thinks, rum as the drink? This must be Danny, you know, processing his father's alcoholism.
Come out, wherever you are.
This is another time where they changed the weapon, where the weapon in the book, and it's a recurring theme, is a roque mallet, because there's a big roque set up in the yard where people play this game together, and it's just another juxtaposition of like happy times in the daylight versus the dark things you could do with things in the overlook, like the mallet. But they choose an axe. There's no real reasoning behind it besides Mr. Grady having done that to his family in the past.
Danny!
He should have just stayed in there. A line that I really like in the book is whenever Jack has gone crazy and he's calling for Danny and Danny's hiding, he says that he takes 2 steps forward just instinctually because, you know, he's so used to obeying his father. Yes! The dog man! That is my favorite ghost in the whole story. I pictured him to be different. Like, I pictured him to be a little bit more like American Horror Story, like kinkier, creepy. But I also like that interpretation of like a furry. But Danny's the one that sees the dog man ghost, and it's super freaky because he's running at him on all fours and barking at him. Like, super freaky. And this is where the movie really diverges. And it's just all different from here on out, y'all. This is the movie now. This is so clever. I would be too frantic to do all that. Even if Mr. Halloran doesn't survive in this version, he does come to the rescue by leaving them his snow bunny. He just gives up. That's a very lasting image right there. So spooky. It doesn't leave your mind. I like this part of the ending, this difference, because the hotel isn't destroyed. The hotel's gonna continue. It's evil. And now Jack Torrance is just another one of the many people who haunt the hotel now. And there he is, one of the many ghosts. Cute! Okay. So now I want to talk about how the ending is different. So in the book, Mr. Halloran arrives to the Overlook and Jack hits him unconscious and moves on to go find Danny. Danny is running away from his father, and they end up on the 3rd floor together, where every single room on the 3rd floor is locked. Wendy finds Halloran, and she's like, "Wake up, snap out of it, wake up." And he comes to, and he's like, "Danny, where's Danny?" And he's like, "We gotta go." They're hearing Jack going crazy up there. She's like, "Danny's up there with his father." And she gives up, she gives up, which is something I want to talk about because I got a really mean quote that Stephen King said about Shelley Duvall, which I didn't like. Whenever Stephen King was discussing the things he didn't like about this movie, he says, "Shelley Duvall as Wendy is really one of the most misogynistic characters ever put on film. She's basically just there to scream and be stupid, and that's not the woman that I wrote about." Well, I disagree with you, Mr. King. I think that this Wendy has a lot more guts than your Wendy does, because once she realizes Danny's up there with his father, she just gives up. She's over it. I mean, to be fair, she does have a bunch of broken bones inside her body. But still, you see Wendy in this movie, she's got her adrenaline, she goes full mama bear, her objective is saving her son. She doesn't really care about herself. Okay, so on page 476, this is about Wendy coming to and hearing stuff. She was nearly convinced they were on the 3rd floor and that Jack, whatever had taken possession of Jack, had found Danny. There was nothing she or Halloran could do now. Then later on page 478, he and Wendy stared at each other like nightmare survivors from a bombed hospital. "We got to get up there," he said. "We have to help him." Her haunted eyes stared into his from her chalk-pale face. "It's too late," Wendy said. "Now he can only help himself." And I always took an issue with that. I really did. I don't like that she just gave up and left him to fend for himself. I don't believe it. She's able to get up and walk around and talk and stuff. You should be able to get up to the 3rd floor and see what's happening. But it seems like she's so horrified about what she might find. She's so afraid of going up there and finding Danny already dead that she just doesn't want to do anything instead. So back to that quote where Mr. King said that this Wendy was more misogynistic and she doesn't do anything. That's just not true at all. So back to the diverging ending. Danny's up there on the 3rd floor with his father, and his father is really coming at him with this mallet. He's like, "Come on, you little pup, time to take your medicine," which are things that Jack's father used to say to him whenever he was a child. Danny has this really great moment, and I wanted to read you a quote from this moment. On page 478, Danny stood without moving. There was no place he could run where the Overlook was not. He recognized it suddenly, fully, painlessly. For the first time in his life, he had an adult thought, an adult feeling, the essence of his experience in its bad place, a sorrowful distillation. Mommy and Daddy can't help me, and I'm alone. That quote is so powerful because, like they said, it's the very first time Danny has this real adult thought. He's up there on the 3rd floor. His dad is being possessed by a ghost. He can't help him, and his mom has just given up. So he's just like, "There's no way out of this. I'm gonna have to save myself." That is such a powerful line. But basically, Jack does save him because in between being possessed. You know, his love as a father is so strong that he actually beats himself to death. But the demon is still able to take possession over him, even though, like, at that point, Jack is not alive anymore. Anyways, at that point, Danny remembers. Tony tells him that there's something your daddy forgot that you need to remember. Danny finally remembers it, and it's the boiler. Because the boiler is so old and ancient, Jack's whole reason he's there is to release the pressure in the boiler periodically, or else the whole overlook is gonna blow up. So Danny's like, oh my god, the overlook is about to explode. So he runs to get his mom. He and Halloran are running out of the hotel, and meanwhile, Jack, the demon zombie man, is like, oh my god, the boiler, no! So it's going down there, it's scalding Jack's, like, dead hands, trying to, like, turn the steaming hot wheel, and he thinks that he releases the pressure, but it's too late. The whole overlook explodes. Danny and Wendy and Mr. Halloran make it out alive. They fly in the air because it's such a big explosion, but they're able to escape on the snowcat Mr. Halloran came in on. But before the whole nightmare is over, they stop by the utility shed, which is outside of the overlook, on the way out. They stop by to get an extra gas can because it is a long drive down the mountain. Well, the utility shed is actually one of the, like, most haunted parts in the whole hotel for some reason. It's, like, so evil that Mr. Halloran, when he goes in there to get the gas can, he starts to be possessed by the spirit, and he starts having visions of taking a mallet in the shed and beating them to death. But Mr. Halloran's able to, like, snap out of it whenever he hears Danny calling for him, and they get out of there. They book it. But it doesn't just, like, end, you know, the way that this ends with them escaping. I think that's the way a lot of horror movies end, is right after the action is over. But I love a movie that shows the aftermath. The novel has an epilogue, which I think is some of the most beautiful writing in the whole book. I'll show you guys some quotes from that too. But basically in the end, we see that Wendy and Danny, they're going to move to Maryland, start a new life. She's getting a job. They still keep in touch with Mr. Halloran because he helps Danny by, you know, shining together and helping him process. Danny's outside fishing and he's really sad and he misses his dad, and Halloran just gives him, like, really sweet advice about how to get over a loss like that. I'll put more in the video, but I'll read you this one out loud, which summarizes what I just said about the ending. Halloran says to Danny, "Terrible things happen in the world, and they're things no one can explain. Good people die in bad, painful ways and leave the folks that love them all alone. Sometimes it feels like it's only the bad people who stay healthy and prosper. The world don't love you, but your mama does, and so do I. You're a good boy. You grieve for your daddy, and when you feel like you have to cry over what happened to him, you go into a closet or under your covers and cry until it's all out of you again. That's what a good son has to do, but you see that you have to go on. That's your job in this hard world, to keep your love alive and see that you get on no matter what. Pull your act together and just go on." I think that's just a wonderful conclusion to the book, because we see our characters have forever been changed after this, and there's no taking that back. Danny's never gonna, like, be able to forget those horrible things that he saw. You just have to move on, and that's a part of life. And I love that this book speaks to the grief that Danny feels at the end of this. It's not like in his head his father was just some maniac. Like, he still grieves for his dad. He still misses him. In a lot of ways, that's where the book and the movie have their biggest difference, is the book makes it very clear that Jack Torrance isn't the one doing these violent things. It's the Overlook that takes possession. And at first it seems like something Wendy and Danny are telling themselves because they can't possibly, you know, understand how he could turn on them in this way. But then it does become clear that it is, you know, textbook possession, especially whenever he hurts himself in the end to save his son. You know, it's clear he didn't want to be doing that. He was out of control in that situation. He was just more prone to being possessed, I think, because of his past with his struggles with, you know, addiction. But in the movie, this does seem more like a abuse story, a story about domestic violence, and uncontrolled anger and the horror in that. It does have ghost elements, but it's not just like a possession ghost story. They keep it more interpersonal. Anytime you're adapting a book, obviously you're going to make big differences, and it all comes down to interpretation. Here's a quote about what Stanley Kubrick thinks of Jack. Jack comes to the hotel psychologically prepared to do its murderous bidding. He doesn't have very much further to go for his anger and frustration to become completely uncontrollable. He is bitter about his failure as a writer. He is married to a woman for whom he has only contempt. He hates his son. In the hotel, at the mercy of its powerful evil, he is quickly ready to fulfill his dark role. So that is Stanley Kubrick's interpretation of that character, and I do think that that is who we see in this movie. We see a man who in the beginning is already crazy, already, treats his wife terribly. His son doesn't seem to like him very much. I can see how that's how he read it, but fundamentally, that's not the character that Stephen King wrote, and that's okay. You're adapting, you're making your own movie. I just wanted to talk about the differences here, because I think that's where a lot of the contention comes, especially because Stephen King writes a lot from his own personal influence. He's talked a lot about how he's had issues with alcoholism in the past, so I think that big difference where they take away all of Jack's humanity, I think that probably offended him, or at least I could see how that would offend him, especially with that, personal bits of his own self that he wrote into that character. But I did pull a few quotes that I wanted to read because I feel like it just shows you how different the character in the book is than the man that Stanley Kubrick just described. He was still an alcoholic, always would be, perhaps had been since sophomore class night in high school when he had taken his first drink. It had nothing to do with willpower or the morality of drinking or the weakness or strength of his own character. There was a broken switch somewhere inside, or a circuit breaker that didn't work, and he had been propelled down a chute willy-nilly, slowly at first, then accelerating as Stofington applied its pressures on him. A big grease slide, and at the bottom had been a shattered, ownerless bicycle and a son with a broken arm. Jack Torrance in the passive mode, and his temper, same thing. All his life he had been trying unsuccessfully to control it. So this just goes to show that Jack Torrance is a man that's had a rough past. There's several scenes where he's reflecting on his traumatic childhood of whenever his father would beat him and his siblings. His father almost killed his mom, and he witnessed that happen. So he has all this trauma, and growing up, he carries that with him. He has anger issues that he's not able to control. He develops an addiction to alcohol afterwards, and it all comes to a head, after he hurts his son and after he crashes his car into an ownerless bicycle. He decides, I'm not going down the right path. He wants to turn his life around. 2 hours from now, the nest would be just so much chewed paper, and Danny could have it in his room if he wanted to. Jack had had one in his room when he was just a kid. It had always smelled faintly of wood smoke and gasoline. He could have it right by the head of his bed. It wouldn't hurt him. I'm getting better. The sound of his own voice, confident in the silent afternoon, reassured him, even though he hadn't meant to speak aloud. He was getting better. It was possible to graduate from passive to active, to take the thing that had once driven you nearly into madness as a neutral prize of no more than occasional academic interest. And if there was a place where the thing could be done, this was surely it. I think that quote perfectly encapsulates how this is hope for the Torrance family. He's finally getting back up on his feet again. He's turning his life around. He's sober, and he sees himself as getting better. So I really disagree with that reading of Jack, already being so miserable when he got here. It's clear to me that the hotel drove him into madness by using his dark past against him and tormenting him with nightmares about it. But honestly, I really wanted to make this movie today because I think this is such a great case of the same story being really great on both sides of the spectrum. They're obviously really different, the book and the movie, but man, do I think that both of them are really great for their own reasons. Okay, like always, I feel like I have so much more to say, but My brain is fried and my throat is tired of talking and yapping, so I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you for making it to the end of this video if you made it this far. I want to take a moment to thank my Patreon supporters and my channel members. They are my number ones. You know, they keep this channel running. My members, they get to see my videos early, as well as some extra content and camcorder archive footage. It's fun over there. It's a sweet little community, and if you're interested in supporting this channel, it's a great way to do so. If you guys like this video, let me know, because honestly, I could do this with Dr. Sleep. I love that book so much, and I've been wanting to reread it, so let me know if you guys are interested, and I'll get started on that journey. And yeah, that's the end of this, so thank you guys. Until next time, Camcorder Cameron signing out.